be able to pitch it. So I'm really
Very
into that.
nice. Very
Thanks.
nice. So what is this book you've just written?
Oh, it's great. It's a murder mystery,
Murder
actually.
mystery. All right. You are
Yeah,
really
yeah,
bringing it
yeah.
out there. Romance novels, murder mysteries. I love it. All right. Action adventure next. All right. So Susan Michelle, this mic is all yours.
Hey, Susan.
Hi, this is Susan Michel. I am here in Western Massachusetts. It is great to be here as always. I am the author of Surrender to Joy, From Suicide to Serenity. I teach the transformational truth of A Course in Miracles, which we are all here to study, to learn, to share, to embody the knowledge of. And when I can adhere to the principles I know to be true that I have learned from A Course in Miracles, my life is filled with peace, love, joy, and happiness. And that is just so beautiful. And my good friend and soul sister, Myrna Skoller, is here from Boca Raton, Florida. She is the author of Private Lessons with Jesus, along with numerous other books. I know she just finished a book now that we were just speaking about. How are you doing today, Myrna?
I'm doing very well. Everything is hunky-dory, I suppose. When I'm not having ego thoughts intrude on my happy, life, daily life, I'm fine. But that's another topic, right? The ego thoughts that seem to be uh, penetrating the mind at times when you least expect it. And I think we all have that, that little query that we need to deal with. Am I right?
You are. Yeah. A Course in Miracles is teaching us to align our thoughts with the mind of God as often as possible and to release the distractions that the ego is the ego is constantly attempting to divert our attention to worries, to fears, to things of the world. But A Course in Miracles is telling us not to combat the ego, but to focus upon the light. And I will begin with the introduction of my book, Surrender to Joy. What I write is my passion is God. God is love and joy and beauty. He is all that is good in the world. Everything else is our own miscreation. When we are filled with joy, we are connected to God. When we are not joyful, we have lost our connection to all that is real. This is my message. It can be clarified with three simple words. Surrender to joy. There is nothing to find. All we need to do is surrender. There is nothing to find in the world because there is no world. The external world that we experience is nothing more than a reflection of an internal condition. So if our external life is not manifesting as we would like it to, we don't need to go into the world to start like rearranging the pieces in our external world. What we need to do is we need to go within and align our thoughts with the thoughts of unconditional love. I just love that analogy about the movie projector. If you're looking at a movie screen and the images are not clear, You don't run up to the movie screen and try to fix the screen. We all know you go to the projector and you clean the lens of the projector. And the same is true in our lives. If things in our external world are not going as we see fit, as we would like them to go, what we need to do is go within. And it's not about blame, it's not about condemnation in any way. It's just about realigning our thoughts with the thoughts of unconditional love. It's such a simple truth, really. So much time, so much wasted time could be saved if people would go within. The truth is very simple because only the love is real. It's not easy because the world is run on the egoic thought system. We are definitely living in a fear-based world. But it's so important to stop. It's so important to slow down. It's so important to trust. And I know you are very good at that, Myrna. You're very good at just being fully present in the moment, especially I'm assuming when you're working on your book, that must be just like an amazing experience because you're completely focused on what you're doing. Am I correct?
Yes, definitely. That's the one thing that I enjoy so much about writing. And I've written several other books. I've always taken great pleasure in the books I've written. The latest book is really my favorite because that seems to be the most professional in that I've had experience with other books. So this one was really something that I learned how to write in a better way and enjoy it that much more because it was coming out really better than anything I'd ever done. But aside from that, it is about staying in the moment. I think if we all find something in our life that really gives us pleasure and we're feeling productive as a result of it, and keeps us in the moment, I think that's really, to me, the greatest achievement, staying in the moment. And we talk about, well, we hadn't talked about, but today's lesson 253, I think is all about that. 253 is the myself is ruler of the universe, myself, meaning that myself with the capital S, self, is the self that is real, the only self that is real, not the little self. The little self is a self that second guesses everything, that judges everything, that, as I said before, the ego thoughts that seem to intrude on my peace is the little self, the self that I guess I'm trying to hold on to as a result of living in the world and feeling that that's all I am. And that's what the ego tries to convince us. So to separate the two, I think, is a lifelong path. It has been for me. I was able to derive that from the Course in Miracles. It finally became apparent to me that there were two me's, or two selves, the big self and the little self. And I found that when I concentrated on the quiet self, the self that is connected to God, is the part of me that extends what I am, which is a part of God, which is all of love. So, and that's all God is again and again. I see that I am only love because it's all I can be. If we really attach ourselves to that true belief, then there's nothing to fear. I mean, that's really all we need to do is to connect to that part of love. And the way to do that is really through forgiveness. I think the only way to connect to the higher self within is to understand that we need to forgive. And forgiveness in itself is a tremendous undertaking because, the ego, again, I said, the ego, it constantly disrupts my mind. And what does it disrupt it with? Thoughts of the past, thoughts of people who might not have been nice to me, anger that pops up. That's something that might have happened years and years ago. But at least at this point in time, I'm able to understand when that's happening and to break it up. And to do that is to get into the part of myself that's quiet, the part of myself that has faith, the part of myself that is connected to God, the part of myself that speaks to God, the part of myself that knows that I'm only love. So if I can keep that part of myself, the big self, the capital S self, available to me all the time, then I will have a much easier time in feeling peaceful and feeling loving. And that's what it is. It does require work and dedication. Right, Susan?
Right, Myrna. Yeah, I always say that the three fastest ways to get into heaven, the three fastest ways to connect to the truth of who we are is forgiveness, acceptance, and gratitude. And out of the three, forgiveness, in my opinion, is the most important. A Course in Miracles says that forgiveness is not needed in heaven, because in heaven there is no condemnation or judgment. God does not need to forgive us because he has never condemned us, but because most of us are still struggling inside of the egoic thought system, at times we need forgiveness. Very much. We need to forgive our brother. You see, when we forgive our brother, it's the same as forgiving ourself. So when I forgive my brother, I am forgiving myself. God has but one son, and we're all part of the sonship. So everything outside of me is reflecting back to me something in my own mind. So if I am triggered by something that my brother did, the reason that it's triggering me is because it has not yet been fully healed in my own mind. So as I forgive him and I accept him despite his shortcomings, I'm actually accepting myself and showing compassion for something within me that has not yet been fully healed. So I just think that forgiveness is just so very important, and how Course in Miracles teaches it is very different than how the traditional Christian church teaches it. The traditional Christian church teaches that, yes, we should forgive our brother, but the reason we're forgiving our brother is because, in a way, we want God to love us more. The Christian church taught me growing up that if I forgave my brother, well, then I was the better person. If I forgave my brother for something that he did wrong, well, then I was superior to him. And A Course in Miracles says that this type of thinking is based on the egoic thought system. There is no differences. There is no superiority. Even with Jesus doesn't want us to worship him. He wants us to be like him. He is an equal part of the sonship. And that's just such a very, very important point to remember. So as you said, forgiveness is so important. And when we don't forgive, we basically remain inside of the egoic thought system. And what we're doing is we're connecting to guilt. When I don't forgive my brother and I see him as guilty, what I am doing is I am connecting to the guilt within my own mind. So when I project guilt onto my brother, I'm exacerbating that quality within myself. And the only way for me to connect to the truth of who I am, which is the innocence, in my mind, that's the truth of who I am. It's to forgive my brother and release the guilt. So whether I'm holding my brother guilty or I'm feeling guilty myself, it's the same. I'm under the ruling of the ego. The way for me to release that and connect again to the truth of who I am, what I need to do is I need to forgive my brother, forgive myself. And as I love to say, this is just such a wonderful affirmation, I embody the essence of innocence. I was saying that this morning when I was running at the reservoir. I embody the essence of innocence, because when we can embody the essence of innocence, our energetic frequency raises itself and we reside in a higher elevated state of mind. As you were speaking, I went back to Course in Miracles text, and I'm trying to find little sentences here that talk about forgiveness. I know one is the only way to feel the peace of God is by complete forgiveness. I might not be quoting that exactly, but I know that's I think in chapter 1. What I opened up to as you were talking, I opened up to chapter 13, the guiltless world. And under Roman numeral 9, this is entitled The Cloud of Guilt. And I have the first line in each of these paragraphs highlighted. The first line of the first paragraph states, guilt remains the only thing that hides the Father, for guilt is the attack upon his Son. So when I am feeling guilty, whether I hold myself accountable or I project that guilt onto my brother, I am basically cutting myself off from the mind of God, because guilt and God are polar opposite. I can't hear God's voice when I am focusing on guilt in me or in my brother. And the second line, I'm just going to read the first line of the first 3 paragraphs because that's what I have highlighted here. The second line starts, release from guilt is the ego's whole undoing. Make no one fearful, for his guilt is yours. And by obeying the ego's harsh commandments, you bring its condemnation on yourself, and you will not escape the punishment it offers those who obey it. Release from guilt is the ego's whole undoing. So as we release guilt from our own mind, we let go of the ego and we reconnect to innocence. And then the third paragraph starts, the world can give you only what you gave it, for being nothing but your own projection. It has no meaning apart from what you found in it and placed your faith in. So I have a choice. Am I going to place my faith in innocence, love, God, the truth? Or am I going to place my faith in fear, guilt, the ego? I mean, the choice is so simple. It's not easy because the world is run on the ego, but it is simple because that's where our happiness lies. Our happiness lies in our brother, in our innocence, and in our brother's innocence. Right, Myrna?
Yeah, I like the topic of guilt, because the Course relies very heavily on that word. It's guilt is viewed as an insane belief in the separation of God, the separation from God. And, that's a source of suffering. And it's almost a defense, as the Course also says, it's a defense against the truth. And, guilt really brings on suffering. And to me, that is something that I don't want because I've suffered from it long enough. So it's something that I felt was important enough to really pay attention to and to get to the bottom of what we feel guilty about. But most of the time, it's inflicted. It is. It's not most of the time, all of the time. We inflict it on ourselves. Nobody can make us feel guilty. We bring that on ourselves. And that I think is, again, we're really up against a very strong opponent, which is the self, the small self, which is the ego. And the ego is just, hell bent on creating havoc, and we allow it to happen, then it has its way. And that's really how, we learn. I think we learn really what we don't want through pain and suffering. And when we've had enough of it, and even the Course in Miracles states that, Jesus says in the Course in Miracles that we do have great capacity for pain and suffering, but it's not without limit. And I certainly can attest to that because in my own personal life, I think I turned to the Course in Miracles when I had enough pain and there was nothing else. And I realized that thoughts, the ego thoughts, were just piling up, piling up, piling up every single day. It got to the point where it was almost every minute of every day when I realized, this has got to stop. And I couldn't stop it. And when I finally did reach for another source, and I knew that the source would be God. I knew that. But how to reach God, that was the first step. How do I reach God? And when the Course in Miracles came to me, I really did see a way out. Not right away. I didn't embody it right away. But when I picked it up again, after putting it down several times, I was then drawn into it. And then I realized, okay, this is my whole way out. Not that it's going to do it for me. I had to do it myself, but I had to. But the Course in Miracles was a source of love that I could lean on. I felt the love really come through the Course in Miracles, the love that God has for me. And I remember thinking, if God loves me so dearly, then how can I not love others? If I'm loved so, why would I not extend that love to other people? And then we bring up forgiveness again. Well, I have to forgive before I can love, right? And then I saw the Course in Miracles was very profound in that respect, that forgiveness is the utmost, the way to healing. And then too, okay, I'll forgive, but it doesn't work if you just say it and not mean it. Forgiveness is really more deep rooted than that. And that comes from an honest a desire to truly forgive by just, not just being, being benevolent. It's not just about being benevolent. It is truly in healing the wound that caused the problem in the first place. And that can be done. And it's done really by understanding that there is a way out. And then we just have to find the way. And that's why the Course in Miracles has been such an important roadmap, so to speak, for me. It's helped me stay on the path. Right, Susan?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, you said so much, and I learned so much from you all the time. Um, it's clear, as you said, we can learn through pain, or we can learn through joy. Learning through joy is God's will for me, and learning through joy is much more fun. God's will for me is perfect happiness. So when we learn through joy, it's just so much more of a flow. However, most of us do experience pain and suffering in this earthly classroom. That's just how life seems to play out. Um, and then when we were speaking about guilt. I mean, guilt is really keeping us inside the egoic thought system. Guilt is really keeping us, in our pain. I mean, just thinking back in my own life about how much guilt I internalized on so many different occasions. And I don't think I'm different from anyone else. That's one thing. We all seem to have similar challenges. I remember before I found A Course in Miracles, when I was 20 years old, and this is what I write about in my book, From Suicide to Serenity, when I went through that suicidal depression and I was completely consumed by my egoic thought system. I was completely consumed by my ego. Basically, the main reason that I did attempt suicide is because the guilt that I felt from a mistake that I thought I made just exacerbated itself in my mind. I worked really, really hard to become a fashion model and get accepted into a real modeling agency. And then once that happened, I started feeling extremely insecure. I didn't feel as pretty or as good as any of the other models that I came across. So I quit because I couldn't handle it at the time. And then all of a sudden, my ego kicked in, and my ego started condemning me, beating myself up for quitting. Like just this voice was constant in my mind. Oh, you had your chance. You worked really hard to get accepted into this modeling agency. You had your chance and then you quit. And I just beat myself up and beat myself up and I beat myself up. And then finally, I just couldn't take it anymore. And that's when I ingested the 6 bottles of sleeping pills. And since then, I found A Course in Miracles. Since then, I haven't suffered so severely. But I do know that to a lesser sense, that egoic thought system is there. The egoic thought system is there. And whether we beat ourselves up harshly, whether we beat another person up harshly, or whether we beat ourselves up I guess less harshly, or we beat somebody else up, less harshly, it's still the ego is running the show, and what A Course in Miracles is teaching us to do is to focus on light, to focus on love, to focus on the truth of who we are. We don't want to attack the ego. We don't want to fight with the ego, because when we fight with the ego or we fight with guilt, we give the guilt power. What we want to do is just focus on the light. And by focusing on the light, the darkness automatically dissipates. And again, it's simple. It's not easy because the world is run on the egoic thought system, but it is simple. It's a simple truth. And A Course in Miracles is telling us that we always have a choice. I mean, I notice that throughout the day. I have the option to stress or to trust. I have the option to go into anxiety or to connect with peace. And God is always talking to us. God is always guiding our lives. when we learn to slow down, we can really listen to what he is telling us, what he is saying to us. I mean, A Course in Miracles tells us we think when we're in a state of angst that our angst is because of something of the world, and this happens to all of us so frequently. We didn't get a job, we didn't get a phone call, we gained 5 pounds, we lost some money. There's so many reasons for us to go into a state of anxiety. But A Course in Miracles tells us, the only problem that we ever have is feeling separated from God. And that, in my mind, is separated from truth, separated from love. That's the only problem we ever have. So whenever we feel stressed out, whenever we're filled with anxiety, it's not because of things of the world. It's because we feel separated from God. And the truth of that is we are never separated from God. So when we feel anxiety and we feel like we're separated from God, we feel alone, that is just not true, because God is always with us. So we just have to slow down so we can remember that. We have to remember to breathe. We have to remember that God is with us always. That's why the Course in Miracles lessons are teaching us to review them throughout the day. And as I say about the Course in Miracles workbook lesson, if you can get to the crux of any one of those lessons, it will take you home to heaven. They're all kind of saying the same thing in different ways. At least that's how I see it. I think you spoke about the lesson of the day when you started. You did lesson 253, which is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I might be on the wrong lesson, but I know this morning I did lesson 252. One lesson before that, what I started the day with, the Son of God is my identity. So I am the Son of God. And if I can remember that throughout the day, then I will remember the truth of who I am. Just A Course in Miracles is telling us over and over, don't play small, because that is not of God. I mean, when we can remember the truth of who we are, we have no reason to stay small, because when we can open ourselves to God and when we can become a conduit for his divine love, there's nothing that we cannot do. With God's grace, with God's help, with God's support, there's nothing that we cannot do. Without God, there's nothing we can do. With God, there's nothing we cannot do. So it's about remembering to open ourselves up to his unconditional love. It also says in A Course in Miracles that God needs us as much as we need him. God is as dependent on us as we are on him. And that God's autonomy is incomplete without us. That's just such a peaceful, wonderful, transformative truth. It just adds peace to my mind. And any thoughts on that, Myrna?
You said a lot of things that I could certainly add to, but one of the things that kind of struck me was when you talked about the suicide, and you wrote about that in your book. And the first thought that came to me is, I'm so glad you did not succeed, Susan, because if you had, look at what the world would not be have your soul, okay, added to everything that is so beautiful and powerful. Okay. And then I thought about Jeff Mironov, okay, the class that we attended 35 years ago, the Course in Miracles class that he conducted. And every Christmas he would show the movie It's a Wonderful Life. So I Googled it, A Wonderful Life. I mean, and again, Jeff was very, very connected, of course. He taught the Course in Miracles. He taught the principles of the Course in Miracles. And this movie was a very important part of his teaching. He felt it was. He felt strongly enough to play that movie every single Christmas, and we'd sit there and watch it. And when I Googled it, and I'm going to read this, the Christmas movie featuring a powerful message from James Stewart is It's a Wonderful Life. It was in 1946. And Stewart plays George Bailey, a man who, on the brink of suicide, is shown what life would have been like if he had never existed. And that was so powerful, And it goes on to say in the film, George Bailey comes to understand the profound value of his life and the difference he has made to his community. The central message involves around several key themes. George learns that his existence and all his sacrifices created an immeasurable impact on the lives of his family, friends, and neighbors. The movie demonstrates how a single person's actions ripple outward and touch countless other lives. And, and I kind of thought of you when you said that, and it's so true when we think about that. The ego tells us we never did anything, we're no good, we never did anything right. I know if I listen to my ego thoughts, I would not really be very proud of myself. Why shouldn't I be proud of myself? Yet, when we recognize that was so valuable and was so completely necessary to the world, and that's why, as you said, God is dependent on us. He needs that. He needs you here. He needs you here to extend, the message that you're giving, the feelings that you exude, and the love that, that is so obvious. So, I really that touched me. I'm glad you brought that up because the world would not be a better place without any of us because we all need to pay more attention onto what we bring to the world in a peaceful, loving way, not in the way the ego would have us believe. So, that kind of brought me to the point where I think that sometimes the ego thoughts that come to me are really very belittling. It belittles me. And when it's me, it's just me, it's the little self, that, that kind of pecks away, it pecks away at our peace. And I don't like to feel that I'm not peaceful. Peace is very important to me because I experienced it. I know what it's like to be peaceful. And how do I feel peaceful? I do it in the quiet moments. I do it in the moments that I'm feeling love in my heart. I'm doing it in the moments that I'm feeling compassion. I'm doing it in the moments that I care about everyone in my life. I really do. So grateful for everyone. So, I just I really don't know how else to kind of frame that, as I just did. Right, Susan?
Yeah, yeah. I remember that at Jeff Murnov's It's a Wonderful Life. I also remember at Jeff Murnov's group, he would play the Wizard of Oz. And I think I enjoyed watching The Wizard of Oz more than It's a Wonderful Life because there were so many Course in Miracles analogies. And I still think of that movie, I mean, one of the most poignant truths about that movie was that the whole time Dorothy was experiencing the drama in the land of Oz, trying to find her way back home, she was home. She was sleeping in her bed, and she had all her loved ones caring for her. And that is so analogous to what A Course in Miracles teaches us. We're here, in this earthly classroom, learning certain lessons. However, we are all safe at home with God right here, right now. I mean, while we're experiencing our lessons in the world, we're dreaming. That's really, it brings peace to my mind when I think about it. That's why I think that meditation is so important as well. And I have started doing that again, thanks to you, Myrna, because you started talking about trying meditation again. And I realized I hadn't been meditating. So for the past few mornings, I've been meditating first thing in the morning. And I just love what meditation does to me, because it stops my mind. It helps me to focus upon the truth. It helps me to be still. That's like, I think it's a biblical quote. It's a Course in Miracles quote: be still and know that I am God. But the truth is, we can't know that we are a part of God unless our mind is still. When our mind is distracted, we forget who we are. But when our mind is still and our mind is at peace, that's how we can remember who we are. I was talking about meditation to a woman in my cycle class yesterday, and I think it came up because we were talking about yoga, and yoga and meditation can go together. I think originally yoga was a stretch that people would do prior to long periods of meditation. But this one lady in the spin class said that meditation is just too difficult for her because her mind is always racing. She told me she has a monkey mind. And I've heard that before. I've heard that from quite a few people. I mean, how I think of it is we all have the ability to meditate, but it takes discipline, it takes practice. We need to practice stilling our mind. We need to practice focusing. And I'm so glad I've gotten into the habit of waking up and meditating each morning again. I actually have an MRI coming up next week, and that's since I think I do have a bit of claustrophobia, but I found that when I'm in the MRI machine, you're in this kind of concealed container or this concealed place, and I do go into a state of meditation. It's just very peaceful, and it's very beautiful, and I do not fear. Like, claustrophobia is a form of fear, but since meditation is about unconditional love and it has nothing to do with fear, when I can go into a meditative state while I'm in the MRI machine, my claustrophobia and my fear just does not kick in at all. So I'm glad that I'm meditating again. So when I have my MRI next week, I can just go into a state of meditation, instead of a state of fear. They always ask me too when I go into the MRI, okay, what kind of music do you want? Do you want classic rock? Do you want jazz? Do you want rap? Do you want, they give me a whole list of choices and I say, okay, well, I want you to play the meditation music because I like listening to meditation music. Oh, we don't have that on our playlist. Sorry. So when I go under the MRI machine, I I just am silent, and that's how I go into my meditation. And then something else that you brought up earlier too that I wanted to comment on, it's how can we feel the love of God on a consistent basis, and or at least that's what I heard from you talking about that. And what I always remember is that the way to feel God's love is by extending that love to others. Like we only know what's within us by giving it away. We only know how much love we have within us when we extend that love to our brother. That is what a miracle is. So A Course in Miracles tells us that we need each other to get home to heaven. Our brothers need us and we need them. I mean, I think there's different periods in my life. Sometimes, I might be a little bit closer to God than my brother. Sometimes my brother might be a little bit closer to God than me, to the state of unconditional love. But whoever is closer to heaven at the time, to extend that love to our brother elevates the consciousness of both of us. It's like a win-win. So we don't really know how much we have within us until we give it away. So if we want love, what we need to do is extend love. So if we want something, we don't go into the world to try to get it from other people. I remember that's what I did a lot when I was younger. I felt unloved, so I tried to get love from a man. I was always trying to get love, and I would have very codependent relationships, or as A Course in Miracles terms, it's special. I had a lot of special relationships, and I always thought that the love that I wanted was in that man, which was a total and complete lie. That was completely fear-based, completely based on the ego. Now I know that if I want love, I don't go into the world to try to get it from someone or something. If I want to feel loved, if I want to remember how much love God has for me, the universe has for me, if I want to know how much love is within me, what I need to do is go out and give it away. Because when you give love to your brother, you remember how much God loves you. So if I want to, again, God never forgave me because God never condemned me. But if I want to feel his love or his forgiveness, even though he never forgave me, he just loved me, then what I do is I forgive my brother. So if I want something, I give it away. Thoughts, Myrna?
Yeah, to me, I was thinking, we all want things. We want, and what I learned is it's okay to want as long as we're not attached to the outcome. I want this, but I'm not going to be attached to the outcome if I don't get it. And I'll use my book, the latest book that I've written, as an example. This book, I loved writing it. I just loved it because it took me on, it really led the way for me. I sort of followed it, and it really turned out to be, to me, very, I won't say important, but I valued it because it made me feel so good. I mean, in other words, it really kept me in the moment. And, I said before that, I signed on, actually, the editor got me involved in this workshop that I've signed on for the beginning of October. And I will get to pitch the book to a literary agent. If you can get a literary agent to take a book, then you can then have a very good chance of getting it into one of the traditional publishing houses. And this is what I'm working on, and this is what I'm enjoying. I did a query letter. I did everything. I did everything necessary to get me ready for this workshop. But I guess my point is that I'm not really attached to the outcome. If it's published by a traditional publisher, which I would like, or if I can get a literary agent interested in it, then that would be all well and good. And if not, I just loved writing the book. That to me was the most important thing. It's just something, it's almost to be like my books are legacies, really. But this one kind of stands apart from the others, I believe. And again, if we really attach ourselves too much to outcomes, then we leave ourselves open for disappointment. But to me, I wouldn't be disappointed. I really wouldn't. It would be nice, yeah. It would be a nice surprise if something wonderful happened, but it doesn't really fill my mind or my life to the point where I, really are banking on something like that. So again, I've learned so much in the course of my life, the things that are important and things that are not important, that are not. So, you're right. Like you said, in your younger years, you were really committed to wanting, love. We all wanted love. But one of the things I guess we can't do is demand love, right? We can only extend it and expect it back that way. So that really is interesting. And you also brought up the movie, The Wizard of Oz, and that too, talks about love. I always believed that Dorothy had a near-death experience, and a desire to go home was so strong that she ended up going home as a result of that. And all that happened in between was about a lot was it was yeah, a lot of adventure. But the bottom line was the love that she felt for her family. And that's really what is all important. If you can feel that kind of love, that means everything. That's really the bottom line to me. Right, Susan?
I love what you just said, Myrna. How important it is not to be attached to the outcome. There's nothing wrong with wanting something. There's nothing wrong with desire, but it's so important to let go and leave, the ending of the story or to God, and allow God to give us what we need. There's an old Rolling Stones song that I used to have hung up on my wall years ago when I lived in Boston. And there was so much in life that I wanted, but I didn't know if that desire was of God or not. So I had the words of the Rolling Stones song up on my wall. You can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need. And I guess, it's just so important to lead the fulfillment of our desires to the power greater than ourself, God, that knows what would benefit our lives the most, to live in the let go. And I've always had such a hard time with that, Myrna. That's always been a challenge for me, you know. I, I remember way back when I was a little girl, like 6 years old, 8 years old, 10 years old, and I believed in Santa Claus. And I remember for Christmas, I would want things so badly, whatever it is that I had my eyes set on, I would want that gift so badly. And I remember one year I wanted hamsters. I wanted hamsters in a habit trail. And I wrote a letter to Santa Claus. And I can't remember if I knew my mom and dad were Santa Claus or not at that point, but I told my parents exactly what I wanted. I wanted hamster in a habit trail, and I wanted it so badly. And I thought if I didn't get this hamster in a habit trail, I was just going to die, And then I remember I got up at like 2 a.m. on Christmas morning, and I went around to all the presents under the tree, and I listened to see if I could hear like a hamster running around in a habit trail. And then I went to one of the packages that was kind of the size of a habit trail, and I listened closely, and I heard like this scurrying around of these little hamsters. And I was just so excited because I got my hamster, and then I could hardly wait to open the package. And I remember my sister used to sleep really late. I would get up at the crack of dawn, and my sister would sleep till like 9 a.m. in the morning. So I had to wait to open my Christmas presents. But once I did open the Christmas presents and I would get the gifts that I desired, I got the hamster in a habit trail. I just was so happy. So I think maybe that's just part of my personality. I want things really, really bad. And as an adult, I've experienced that same wanting. And I've experienced disappointment when I didn't get exactly what I wanted. But as you so astutely pointed out, Myrna, there's nothing wrong with desire, but to live in the let go is the most important thing. Because even when I did get the hamster in the habit trail, my happiness was so short lived. I was like happy for, I don't know, an hour. And then, I still like my hamster, but it wasn't such a big deal anymore. So it's so important to live in the let go and leave the final outcome to the good God. What I'm listening to lately is a statement. We don't get what we want. I think I heard this from Wayne Dyer. We don't get what we want. We get what we are. We don't attract in life to us what we want. We attract in life to us who we are. So it's about connecting, like raising our vibration to resonate to the frequency of that thing that we want to attract into our life. Any thoughts on that, Myrna?
All I could think of it is that you wanted a hamster. I wanted a howdy doody marionette. That's what I wanted. I don't know if some readers, some people, listeners, know what Howdy Doody was, but he was a very famous little puppet that when television first came to being, Howdy Doody was very big in that, in that context. So, and that's what I wanted. But I remember it was up in the closet. It was wrapped up for me and I couldn't get it. I wanted it now. I wanted it now. I didn't want to wait for it. And I pulled it out of the closet and I opened it up before Christmas. Okay. I didn't care. All right. My mother got very angry at me, but I opened it up. But you know what? And then, and they acted, my family acted as if it was like something that that I'm so impatient that it was a bad thing. So I love what the Course in Miracles says, you could have it now. The Course in Miracles says you don't have to wait. You could have things, you could have it now, doesn't it? The Course in Miracles prefaces that. You don't have to wait for love. You don't have to wait for, what we so want so badly, what we seek for, when we can have it right now. So there's nothing wrong with now, you know. So that's how what I related to when you mentioned that. Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, it is funny.
That's funny. Just remember the separation occurred when the Son of God forgot to laugh.
Right.
Laughing is so healthy.
Yeah.
So today was just so fabulous. Thank you. I love you,
Thank
Myrna.
you.
Thank you. And as the Course in Miracles says, nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. The only thing that's real is the love. Thank you, Audzi, for being
Thank you,
here. I
Audrey.
just
You're
saw
sweet.
Audzie's chat in the chat room. Thank you, thank you. And I will now return the microphone to Lynn.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan and Myrna. And you both gonna go ahead and shut this down, and we will see everyone tonight for Sandy Levy. She'll be on again tonight, talking about the holy relationship. So 7 p.m.